community update. I'm gonna share my page with you here, and then I'll take some questions after that. It's pretty short. Let's see if I can get it shared with you. You guys seeing that? Can you guys see that screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this just gives you a little information on where we're at and what the lid lift's about. So North Whidbey Fire and Rescue has been in serving the island since 1952. Basically, we have about 2,400 calls a year. We also service everything outside of the city of Oak Harbor. So we don't get any funding from the city of Oak Harbor or from Island County. It's all based on property taxes. Our primary source of revenue is the fire levy, which is paid for by homeowners through property taxes. And we're primarily a volunteer department. Currently we have 4 duty crew members on a day, and then we have some administrative staff, but primarily the largest portion, about 95% of our department, is volunteer. We do a lot of things besides firefighting. We do EMS. So we have a contract with Whidbey Health. We run 2 basic life support ambulances. That's a renewable annual contract where we provide a basic life support ambulance in conjunction with a paramedic ambulance, and that gives them some more depth in their emergency responses. It also gets a rig quicker to scenes in the Oak Harbor general area. We do respond to the city for some things, but our primary district is in North Whidbey's area. We also do wildland firefighting. We do hazmat response, auto accidents, water and high angle rescue. We do a significant number of water rescue. That's the slide here is our smaller boat. We're practicing out in, this is Campbell Lake, actually, we're practicing in. And then we do high angle rescue, and we have a fair amount of that. That's typically off the bluffs on the north end of the island or the west side of the island. And we do a lot of that in conjunction with either Central Whidbey or Navy will come out and help us on those. And then public education prevention is what we like to do the most of, because hopefully if we do public education prevention, the other things we don't need to do. Unfortunately, with COVID, we've had a very limited ability to do public ed and prevention otherwise than what we can do virtually this year. Typically November or October is a big fire prevention month. We get in all the schools, the daycares and businesses, and we've done none of that this year except what we can do virtually. We're starting to get some tours back from kindergarten and places like that, but they're very few and far in between. So that's been a challenge. This is our service area, about 55 square miles, about 18,000 people. Basically, we go all the way from the bridge on the north end all the way to Libby Road on the south end. And then,
hey, John, I don't mean to interrupt you, but your slides aren't changing. We're still looking at the fire truck.
Okay. How's that?
That's better.
Okay. So make sure we got, there we go. Okay, so that's our area. These are where our station's at. We have 7 stations. Start out with station 2-1, which is our newer station up in Cornet Bay area. And then our station farther south is actually right by the airport on Monroe Road, Monroe Landing, which is station 2-7. And then we have the administration building, which is the chiefs and administration is on Midway Boulevard, actually in the city. Wonder why it's not moving. Basically, we started in 1950, and it was a really small group of dedicated citizens. If you look at our stations, if you go on our website and look at the stations, you'll see some of them there are block buildings with 1 bay that was added on the 2. So a lot of the departments started out as separate individual, like Pawnell Shores had their own department, Silver Lake had their own departments. And as communities developed on the island, they would build fire stations and they would staff them with volunteers from their community. As we progressed on into the 70s, they went to 2 fire districts, north and south, and then merged into 1 fire district, and we took over all those stations. Today, there's 6 full-time personnel, 23 part-time, and 61 volunteer personnel that give back to our community and respond on calls. That number fluctuates with volunteers because of we've got some Navy people and people that are in and out, but typically that's about the number we stay at, is somewhere between 85 and 100. Most of our volunteers are work other jobs full time. Like I said, we have a lot of Navy people, but they work different jobs in different areas. We also have a lot of husband and wife team. This is actually a couple that lives up near Cornet Bay. So this is one of the Marine units. They respond. They are just on the MSAR team, or the Marine Search and Rescue team. This is Paul and Nicole. And they, like I said, they run out of Station 2-1 and they run the Marine Rescue. Everybody has a vested interest in the community. Nobody's making a fortune here. Most of our volunteers are here because they want to give back to the community, want to help. They also teach fire and injury prevention classes. We organize food drives. We did one on 4th of July. And then we do a lot of service organization events that strengthen our community. So before COVID, we were doing night out, Halloween things, and various organizational events that have been limited this year. We are debt free. That's been one of the big things the district has done on, is we've been very financially responsible or fiscally responsible, is we have a balanced budget every year. You can see that budget on our website. If you go to our website, there's a drop down for financial, and you can look at our current position every month. It's updated. We passed all our independence audits by the state. We've got another one coming up here pretty shortly for 2020. But we've always bought everything with cash. We've been able to finance internally versus having to pay interest for loans and mortgages and things like that. Currently, we're at 62 cents per thousand. Just to give you an idea, we're the lowest of the fire districts. South's new levy puts them above $1. Central's is about $1. And then Central on top of that has a bond for stations and equipment. We all operate off the 62 cents that's paid through property taxes. What we can't control is the cost outside of it, the cost of fuel, the cost of health insurance, taxes that we pay. We can't control that. So to give you an idea, that 62 cents on per thousand is about 1.7 million right now a year, and we get about a 1% raise that a year. I had somebody ask me the other day, well, how does that compare to 10 years ago? Why do you need money? So we went back and pulled the numbers, and in 2010, we got 1.641 million from property taxes. In 2019, we got 1.613 million, 30,000 less. Why is that? Because 2008 to 2013, 14, 15, property taxes went down actually. What happened during that period of time, our expenses were about $15.5 million in 2010. In 2019, they're about 1.8 million. So you can see what's happening there is even though the revenue is starting to go back up now from taxes, it's still down from what it was after the 2008 crash, and our expenses are multiplying. And it's not because we're just spending money; it's because we can't control the price of gasoline, wages, salaries. We have some limit on, but people have to have a cost of living raise too. We apply for grants, and we've got plenty of grants over the period of time, but grants are not a guarantee, and really it's not meant to take care of your operational needs. It's meant for extraordinary costs that you might have. We aggressively maintain our emergency apparatus. We've spent almost $100,000 on vehicle maintenance here. 75 grand of that almost is attributed to the 2 engines that we're looking to replace. And that's not because they're not taken care of. It's because they run a lot more calls and we're busier than what we used to be. And the price of fixing them has gone up exponentially. We rely on volunteers primarily to respond to calls. That keeps our costs down. And like this lead left, when we ask for money from the community or funding, it's specific. So in this case, it's specifically for replacement of 2 fire engines, which are about $500,000 a piece, replacement of radios, which are about $200,000 to $300,000, and then the air packs that wear on our back, which are probably going to be in the range of $200,000 to $250,000. Give you an idea, call volume in 2010, we were just under 1,000 calls. Today, we're going to be at probably 2,500 this year. So with that goes wear and tear on equipment, wear and tear on vehicles, and just cost of fuel and everything else goes up. So we've had about a 45% increase in the last 10 years. As I said before, we get 2 fire engines that are at the end of their usable life. They're at the risk of being unreliable. We spent 75 grand. You come to a point, even with your own cars at home, that it's more cost effective to replace that vehicle than it is to continue repairing it. And we're past the point of repairs. We've got one right now that's out of service. We've got a reserve in covering it because I've got a part that we can't get for it. They don't make parts for that truck anymore. So they'll either have to man one or find one off a used truck somewhere in a graveyard. Radios, I talked about that. Two-way radios are the lifeline. That's what we talk to dispatch on when we're at a fire. That's what the personnel inside the building in life-threatening smoke and fire environments are talking back and getting direction from the command officer. Most of those are over 20 years old. If you saw the video we had on our Facebook page, on our web page, you can look at, you can see how beat up some of the stuff is. The air packs are in 3rd cycle. That means they're somewhere between 10 and 15 years old. So they're at the end of their life. The air tanks that go on those air packs in the end of 2022 will not be, you can't fill them anymore. They'll run out of their life because there's life expectancy. You can fill them so many times based on their age. So what we're asking for is 15 cents on 1,000 in the general election. That would put us at 77 cents. We're still well below the other 2 fire districts, but it would bring in about 370,000 a year, and it would allow us over the next 10 years to replace and purchase these things that we need to purchase and operate. So the 15 cents would allow us again to buy these items without having to finance them. If we finance things, then we pay interest, which in turn, you as a taxpayer pays interest on. The other issue with apparatus replacement, equipment replacement, is it affects the Washington Radium Bureau rating, which is picked up by the insurance companies, and that's how they rate your fire insurance. So have an apparatus that is outdated by their standards or is not operational can affect potentially business and homeowners what their insurance rates are. This is just a breakdown. It shows you basically what that money would bring in. It would put us at 370,000 a year, or yeah, about 370, and which coincides with what the property value is, ironically, for the island. There's a lot of $1 million homes on the island, but the average, if you take everything into consideration, is about 370. So it would cost a normal homeowner $55 a month. If you have a $500,000 house, or 55 a year, I'm sorry. If you have a $500,000 home, it's about 75 a year. So it's somewhere between $4 and $6 a month is the average cost. So if you have Starbucks coffee every day, you're paying the same thing as you would pay for this lid lift. My email address is here. Or the web address is www.nwfr.org. My email is pretty simple. It's chiefclark@nwfr.org. You can call me, or you can call my office at 360-675-1131, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you have related to station locations or anything else. If you want to come out and see the equipment, feel free to give us a call, and we'll make a road trip with you and take a look at any of the apparatus, any of the stations you want to. So I appreciate your time today, and hopefully we'll have a good outcome from this. I think we've been very specific about what we're asking for and our need. It's not really a wish at all or a want. It's a need. It's a need to replace things and keep them in good operating order. So thanks for your time. I appreciate it. Any questions?
Any questions in chat, Emily?
No, there's none at this time.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much, Chief. Really appreciate it. Those of you who are on the outskirts of Oak Harbor or in that area, please take a look at your ballots. Fire department does an amazing job for the community, not only just responding to emergencies and fires, they're very active in the community. So I feel that we should get behind them and support them the way they support the community. So thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay, so at this time, welcome to the Oak Harbor Congressional Candidate Forum. The Chamber thanks both candidates, Rick and Tim, for being here. We also likewise thank everyone who has tuned in to listen to our candidates. Participating in today's forum is United States Representative District 2, Challenger Tim Hazelo, and Congressional Congressman Rick Larsen. In the entrance of the candidates' time, they will be able to respond to 5 questions. The procedural format will be in the order of the candidates responding and closing was determined by the opponent versus the incumbent. So the opponents will go first, then the incumbent. That order will remain the same for closing statements. So at this time, while we go over the procedures, we'll give the candidates opportunity to get ready for the questions. So this is going to be the procedures. There are 5 pre-planned questions will be asked for each candidate, 1 question at a time, followed by 5 questions from the floor. So anyone in the audience, if you have a question, please feel free to put it in chat and Ms. Emily will take care of it at the end. Each candidate in the order I just described will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. Time will commence at the moderator's call to begin. Our time clock will begin. When your time runs out, the candidate is to cease his response whether or not it has been completed. This courtesy is essential to the fairness of the forum to everyone. 1 challenge will be provided to each candidate, allowing that candidate to challenge the remarks of his opponent. At the conclusion of the opponent's response, at that time, the challenging candidate will have 30 seconds to state his challenge, and the challenged candidate will have 30 seconds to respond to the challenge. The timers will signal the time of end of both challenge and the response. Each candidate is entitled to 1 challenge, not 1 challenge per question. Following responses by all candidates to all questions and to any challenges, each candidate will have 90 seconds for closing remarks. The timers will cue again. We acknowledge that politics in general and the issues surrounding elections can be a source of emotion and sometimes strong disagreements among candidates. The objective of this forum is to give each candidate the opportunity to address the constituency present on their response to the questions asked. Both the candidates and the audience are requested to extend to each candidate the opportunity to speak and to be heard on these issues. Audience, other than the candidates speaking, I'd ask you to please stay on mute. So with this time, we're going to begin, and Tim, you will be up first. So the first question is, if elected to office, what impact do you hope to achieve while in office?
Well, can you guys hear me okay?
Go ahead.
All right, good. So I'd hope to bring common sense back to the American people, or to the DC area, I should say. It seems like everybody who's in Congress lives around DC and doesn't know what's going on out here in the real world. So I'd like to bring common sense back. So here's what we're going to talk about. We can keep spending more than we have, not being accountable, not letting the people know what's going on, and keep kicking that can down the road to our children. Or we can do one of 2 things. Actually, we can do both things. We can become more fiscally responsible. We can be more accountable to the people, which we haven't done for years and years. We can start by using common sense legislation. I wrote down here that most of our legislation is pork ridden. It's full of fluff. It's full of things that don't have anything to do with the legislation that we're talking about. It's just good photo ops for our current congressman is what it is. A lot of it is. For instance, the so-called HEROES Act. What a great title, right? But beneath it, you'll find 1,800 pages and almost $3 trillion of a lot of fluff. We can be a lot more precise with that stuff. Legislation should be precise regarding the subject matter, understandable by the people who it affects. I mean, if you can't even understand what legislation says, how can we live by it? How can it be a rule to us? Did the $2.4 trillion we spent before, did that help people? I think it did. As a matter of fact, I'm sure it did. But what happened to the rest of it? Lost in bureaucracy. That's what happened to it. Fraud, waste, abuse. So to answer the question, I want to bring common sense and an America First, people-centered mindset and ideas back to DC, back to the people's house. And that's what I'd like to do when I first get there. Thank you.
Okay, and now we're gonna do the same question for Congressman Rick. If elected to office, what impact do you hope to achieve while in office?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to address you today. And I want to thank the Oak Harbor Chamber of Commerce for conducting this forum. First and foremost, my goal in office is to help improve the quality of life of the people that I have the privilege to represent. And there's a lot of steps that we can do in order to achieve that together. First and foremost, we need to, I hope, understand that the public health response to the pandemic will lead to economic recovery, and there are no shortcuts. So to achieve the goal of improving the lives of the people I represent, I think we need to continue to address the concerns that people have about the pandemic, the impacts it has had on jobs, on community health, and on individual health as well. We need to think about what economic recovery looks like too. And I think that economic recovery should start with an infrastructure investment-led recovery. I'm on the Transportation Committee in Congress. I think it's important that we consider passing a strong, robust, long-term transportation investment recovery bill that helps create jobs in the future. We need to expand access to high-quality healthcare as well. I'll continue to support the women and men and the missions at Naval Air Station Whidbey Island. That's an important part of improving the quality of life of the people I represent in the Oak Harbor area. And finally, I'll just note that it's important to focus on specific local issues like impact aid that helps Oak Harbor schools help fill the gap on education funding in the area. I hope to have your support. I was born and raised in the area. My grandfather and grandmother farmed in Oak Harbor way back in the day. So my family has deep roots in the area, but that's not why you should vote for me. You should vote for me because I'm committed to improving the quality of life of the people I represent. Thanks.
Thank you. Any challenges? Okay, seeing no challenges, we're gonna go on to the second question for you, Tim. We are all aware of how the coronavirus has had a devastating impact on our lives. What are your plans to aid in our economic recovery?
Well, first thing, open our economy, right? We got to do that while being extremely specific in where we spend the stimulus funds, because we've spent a lot of stimulus funds on a lot of things, and here we are still suffering. We have good treatments. We know more than we did when this thing came out. We know who's affected, how they're affected, how to treat these people. We need to change the narrative a little bit. So I wrote down a funny story here. I'm going to read it real quick. Do you know that the other day NASA put out that on November 2nd, we have a 0.042% chance of Earth being hit by an asteroid? Not very COVID related though, is it? Here's the facts though. The chance of the average American dying of COVID is about a 0.026%. As the guy from NASA said, I think I'm going to trade in my face mask for a helmet. I mean, here's the thing, guys. We know it's here. It's going to be here. It's going to be here forever. It's not going away at this point in time. The more we test, the more people are positive. And yet, the amount of hospitalizations and deaths are going down. The virus is, we're getting to the point where we're dealing with the virus better. We know how to treat it. It's going to be more like the flu as time goes on. It's never going to go away. So like I said, the virus is here now. So we can shut up in our basements like Joe does and live in misery and silence and broke and sad, or we can start living life again. We can get out and open our economy. We don't need another $3 trillion floating around out there for pet projects and museums and things that have nothing to do with the COVID virus, just for our children to have to pay that back somewhere down the road in spades. We need to open up our economy right now. We can do that safely, and we can do that with precise legislation not pork-riddled pet project legislation, and get out there and live our lives. We all know as adults that living is much better than not living, and living has risks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and now the same question for you, Congressman Rick. We are all aware of how the coronavirus has had a devastating impact on our lives. What are your plans to aid in our economic recovery? You're muted. Technical difficulties. There we go.
Are we good? Okay, great. Thanks.
We're good.
So now I'm 1 minute into it. No, so I'll just reiterate that the public health response has to lead the economic recovery response. There are no shortcuts. Every reputable scientist in the United States will tell you that we are not through the pandemic, and it is not time to freely open the economy, that there are still important steps to take to address the public health issue of the pandemic. We see in our own state a surge, the fall surge is upon us. The numbers clearly show that, clearly showing that there are still steps that we need to take to wear a mask, to practice social distancing, to follow guidelines, the public health guidelines. And there are no shortcuts. That is frustrating. It's frustrating to me, and it's frustrating to many of the people I represent. But we do need to get through the public health response appropriately and safely to lead to economic recovery. And an updated HEROES Act can help. Now, in the CARES Act, which passed earlier this year, it helped people. It put $1,200 in the pockets of folks. It helped over 1,000 small businesses in Island County continue to stay open and save jobs, including the 6 or so that I visited in Oak Harbor in August through the Paycheck Protection Program. We need to pass the new HEROES 2.0 Act. It will strengthen the Paycheck Protection Program. It'll provide help to state public health agencies and local public health departments and public health districts. It provides $75 billion for COVID-19 testing and contact tracing and treatment, because we do know that the public health response will continue to help lead us to economic recovery.
Thank you. Any challenges? Okay. Seeing none, we're going to move on to the third question. This is for you, Tim. What is your stance on America's current affordable health care, and what would you like to see improve?
Well, I hope you say affordable health care jokingly, because we all know it's not that affordable, don't we? You know, the current administration has actually done a pretty good job. They've helped lower prescription drug prices. They're working on expanding healthcare plans out across the nation. But let's think about this. Since the falsely titled Affordable Care Act, which was anything but affordable, got put into place, costs have gone up. Services have gotten harder to get. People who loved their doctors weren't able to keep their doctors. It's been a bad situation. Now, is it all the ACA's fault? No, it was not very good to begin with, right? So something has to be done. But the ACA, it didn't do it. It didn't fix it. So, you know, that it exasperated the problem, if not anything else. So what we need to do, here's what we need to do. We need to open up healthcare insurance across state lines. We need to have more plans and more choices. We need to allow people to shop for their prescription drugs. We need to allow people to have choices, businesses to have choices. We're Americans, for God's sakes. We were brought up and we believe in freedom and choice and life and liberty and prosperity and all these things that we've been taught about all our lives. And yet all of a sudden the government wants to decide which healthcare policy we can or can't have, even though they don't really have to live by that, do they? They have their own deal going on. And so let's just get back to the reality of it. Let's give choices. My 22-year-old son, who actually he's older than that now, it seems like yesterday, but my son doesn't need to spend $25,000 a year on healthcare. He could have a catastrophic policy and be okay, where I might need to spend more, right? So we can fix this. Maybe we fix the ACA. I doubt it. I'm for repeal and replace and let's just start over. But it can be fixed. We just need to get rid of the gridlock and quit kicking the can down the road.
Thank you. Okay. Any challenges? Okay, so this one is for you, Rick. What is your stance on Americans' current affordable health care, and what would you like to see improve?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I support the Affordable Care Act. I support expanding it. I support protecting the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act was working as it was being implemented as we passed it, until the current administration came in and began to undermine it. The current administration was not successful in repealing it. It was therefore not successful in replacing it. And we know that the president has no plan to replace the Affordable Care Act, but they were very successful at undermining it. They undermined it by not continuing to fund the cost share reductions, which helped folks of lower income folks purchase healthcare plans. They undermined it by allowing the reinsurance backstop to expire, which kept premiums stable. And when you look at the increased premiums that have occurred, that largely occurred after 2016 when the new administration came in and began to undermine the Affordable Care Act. So I would reinstate the cost share reductions to help folks with lower incomes purchase affordable plans through the exchanges. I would reinstate the reinsurance backstop to stabilize premiums. I would introduce a public option to force more choice into the exchange, into the healthcare exchanges. And I would pass the Lower Drug Costs Act, which is HR 3, which has already passed the House of Representatives. The Lower Drug Costs Act would give Medicare the authority to negotiate lower drug prices, just like the VA has currently, as well as giving Medicare the authority to negotiate lower drug prices for so-called orphan drugs, drugs that are in the market but have no real competition, things like insulin, as a for instance. So there are things that we can do to protect and expand the Affordable Care Act and get back to the way it was being implemented to bring more affordable health care to folks.
Thank you. Okay. Any challenges?
Sure, quick one. So he says that the Affordable Care Act did not start struggling until after President Trump came into office. Well, I ask you to go back and look at your premiums in 2012 after it started. I ask you to go back and look at what's happened since then. I ask you to think to yourself, use your common sense. Don't use some statistical numbers that some congressman comes up with somewhere, but figure it out for yourself. Look at what your experience is. Don't take what somebody else's experience is or them trying to push their experience on you. What is your experience? My experience is that it's more expensive, harder to get. I can't choose my doctor. My deductibles are out of control. And Rick just wants to keep doing the same thing over and over again. I think we need to change that.
Okay, Rick, would you like to respond to that?
Sure. I'm not aware of what my opponent's healthcare plan is. As a retiree, he is possibly on TRICARE. And so a lot of the rules of the Affordable Care Act don't apply to TRICARE, but if he's not, it'd be interesting to find out what his particular plan is. I have found, since I am in a plan through the Affordable Care Act, that my experience and the experience I've heard from many other people is exactly as I've explained it, that the real challenges to the Affordable Care Act came after the Trump administration.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And we're going to move on to question 5. So this is question 4. I jumped ahead there. So this is going to be Tim first. This past year, we have witnessed environmental disasters in the U.S., such as more frequent and extreme wildfires, hurricanes, compared to the previous years. What is your stance on the environmental impacts in global warming?
Well, first of all, we got to correct the question a little bit. It's not considered global warming no more. It's considered climate change. As you remember, in the 70s, we were going to freeze to death. We were going to have an ice age. And then the late 90s or early 90s through the 90s and into the early 2000s came about. And all of a sudden, we were going to drown in the oceans because all the ice was going to melt. So this is an ever-changing climate change, not global warming. I'm going to give you a couple of quick statistics. Last 4,500 years. The hottest period of time was about 1100 BC. The coldest period of time was about 1600 after BC. In 07 through 09, we actually were below the 4,500 year average global temperature. Interesting, huh? So the scientists all know that ocean temperatures have a drastic effect on air temperatures and the rest of the global climate as far as humidity levels and goes. But what affects ocean temperatures? Well, let's talk about that for a second. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but there's something called the axial seamounts off the coast of Oregon. And in 2018, it spewed 88 billion with a B, gallons of molten rock into the seafloor, increasing the temperature of the ocean. Pretty natural, huh? I'm not saying that people don't have something to do with it. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be good stewards to their environment. I know I am. I have a small farm. I have a boat. I love the sound. I love to go fishing. I'm not saying that we can't do better, because we can do better. But the fact of the matter is that we've had 78 major temperature changes up and down. They last an average of 300 to 500 years. And yet now the globalists and the controlling party to control you and I more want to scare you into thinking you're going to die in 10 years, just like they did in 1970, just like they did in 1990, just like they did in 2000. But we're still here, aren't we? Like I said, use your own experience.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Congressman Rick, the same question to you. This past year, we have witnessed environmental disasters in the U.S., such as more frequent and extreme wildfires and more hurricanes compared to previous years. What is your stance on environmental impacts, global warming / climate control?
Thanks for the question. And you shouldn't apologize for the words you're using in your question at all. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Climate change is real. Humans contribute to climate change quite a bit, and we can change what we do in order to counter the impacts of climate change. And we ought to do that. I support a net zero carbon emissions by 2050 and have supported legislation to do just that. I think the United States needs to be a global leader, both in fighting climate change and a global leader in producing the products, manufacturing the products, providing the services around the world to help other countries do that as well. So we benefit economically from the fight in climate change as well. There's a direct tie between the progress of our economy and the growth in our economy, a positive growth in our economy, and our efforts on climate change. The House passed the Clean Economy Jobs and Innovation Act. I've supported that. That's a huge investment into ensuring the United States continues to be a global leader on climate change. And we need to get back into the Paris Climate Change Agreement, because the U.S. is a great country and it needs to lead as great countries do. But not only acting globally, we need to act locally. We need to act for ourselves. We passed the Great American Outdoors Act this year. It's been signed into law. This is the Land and Water Conservation Fund funding that helps us protect our own environment. I'm a leader on estuary restoration, salmon habitat restoration. I want to create salmon habitat for more salmon so Tim can catch more fish. I want him to do that. And we can do that by investing in our estuaries. So that's an important part. I've been touring my district over the last month or so, meeting with our marine resources committees, including in Island County, to look at what volunteers are doing to help improve our environment. So it's not just a matter of acting globally and acting in Congress, it's also supporting the local efforts so that we have a continuum of efforts to fight climate change and protect our environment. And for that reason as well, I hope you can support my campaign.
Thank you. Any challenge on that? Good. Okay. So we'll move on to the fifth question now. So this one goes to you first, Tim. If you could ask your opponent one question, what would it be?
Boy, that's always a tough one, isn't it? I'm sure Rick feels the same way. So I wrote something down. I was at work this morning. I work on NAS Whidbey Island. It's a tough deal, but so I sat there for a few minutes before I got off to come home and do this and wrote this down. So I've not heard you talk at all about violence against law enforcement, about the riots and the destruction of our mostly Democrat-led cities. Will you, after all this talk about President Trump and the Republicans not condemning things, which they have over and over and over again, I might add, but will you condemn Antifa and the self-described social leaders of the leftists that are taking over the Democrat Party and say no more violence in our streets, no more violence against our police, rather than state their names and only state the other names?
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. My 2 minutes started. Sorry. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for the question. I'm sorry you haven't heard me condemn all the violence that's taking place. I'm actually pretty critical of the city of Seattle's response, as well as the violence in the streets of Seattle as well. And so, I'm sorry you haven't heard that. I certainly have done that and condemned that. And the folks who are involved in Antifa, who are involved in violence, again, I've already have condemned them in the past. I'll condemn them today, and I'll condemn them in the future as well for violence as well. But I certainly won't condemn the peaceful demonstrations that have taken place throughout the district, my district, or throughout the state or throughout the country. People who've stood up or standing up for Black lives in our country. It's really heartening to see that. I'm kind of sorry we're still at a point in our country's history where we still need to recognize that Black lives matter, that the lives of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, that we still have to name their names and be reminded of their names. But I'm also very willing to do that. In fact, I've reached out to leaders in the Black community in my district, elected leaders and law enforcement in developing my position in support of the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, which passed earlier this year, and I call upon the Senate to take that bill up and pass it, and then call upon the president to sign that bill. So I think it's important that we move forward on supporting changes in law enforcement in this country while we support law enforcement. We've got a strong record of supporting law enforcement, strong record of supporting federal funding for law enforcement as well. And I'll certainly stand behind that too. Thank you.
Okay. So the same question to you, Congressman. If you could ask your opponent one question, what would it be?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. What I want to ask Tim Hazelo is thinking about my strong support for Naval Air Station Whidbey Island, for the women and men who work there in the civilian side and the military side, for the missions that are there, including the new Triton mission and the P3s, what's left of the P3 and now the P8s and the Growlers in the past, Growlers now and in the future. And the support I've shown the Oak Harbor School District to fighting for impact aid because of the presence of the NAS Whidbey Island. My question is, how would you be different than me in supporting Naval Air Station Whidbey Island? Thank you.
Well, thanks for that question, Rick. That's a darn good question. I've been stationed at NAS Whidbey Island for half my life. I love this place. This is why Whidbey Island is my home. It's because of NAS Whidbey Island. So I'll do everything within a congressman's ability to support NAS Whidbey Island and the naval station in Everett and Smoky Point and other places around our district and state and the West Coast and the United States of America. You will not find, I guarantee you will not find a more patriotic, military respecting, loving man than myself on the face of this earth. I was willing to give it all, and I risked giving it all multiple times so I could be here today. But what I've decided to do was churn in that uniform, churn in that airplane, churn in that gun, and then adopt a podium and a microphone to get out there and let people know how important it is that we continue to make this nation great. We continue to keep our military strong. We continue to be the leaders in the world of military strength, See, I believe in strength through power. When our previous administration was out bowing to other people and apologizing for being an American, our soldiers were suffering like I was in Afghanistan. I remember the terrible rules of engagement under the Democrat administration, how we had to wave flags and yell and maybe shoot shots over their heads before we could actually engage. There was craziness going on. People died because the Democrat administration wanted to be apologetic. And so I won't be that guy. I'm on fire. I'm a different kind of guy. I'm going to fight for every inch of that hill. And when we take Capitol Hill, our military will be proud, appreciative, and well supported by me and any other Republican that gets into office. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now we'll take a few.
Do I get a chance to challenge that?
Yes, if you'd like to, you still have your challenge left. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just use my challenge to ask the question again. It was very specific. What would you do differently in supporting the missions at NAS Whidbey Island that's different than what I've been doing? Thank you.
Are we ready? I don't see the clock, sorry.
Getting there.
Okay, there we go. Perfect. Yeah, you know, what I would do is I would be here. I would be on the base with these folks. I would listen to what they have to say, not just the suits and the birds, what they have to say, to what the enlisted guy has to say on the ground. The guy out there in the sideways rain in December, changing an engine on the side wing of a P3. I would listen to those folks, and I would consider what they need and how I can help them as much as I would the higher ups. We need a round.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, before we go into closing remarks, we'll take 5 questions from the floor. Emily, do you have the questions ready?
Yes, thank you. And please remember, if you have questions, put them in the chat so that I can read them off. So, assuming the pandemic will continue to affect us, what is the plan to support people after the unemployment benefits expire for many people after 39 weeks?
We'll leave that one for you, Congressman Rick.
Yeah, thanks. Just to be clear, are we each answering these, or are these directed at each of us individually, or how's that work?
So depending on how the question is, that one assumes that we know you should have the answer to that question because Tim is not in the office, so that one we're going to throw to you. Depends on what the question is, and I haven't seen the questions.
This one is asked for each of them, so yep, one at a time, I guess.
So Tim, go ahead, and then we'll let Congressman Rick go next.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to let Rick go first, but I'll go first. That's fine. Here's the thing is if we open up the economy, if we look at the reality of what's going on, if we get people back to work, then we won't have to worry about the unemployment as much as we do right now, huh? I know that one of my sons was laid off because of COVID. He was making more money staying at home in his basement than he was making going back to work. How's there an incentive there to go back to work? So do we need to help these people that are unemployed because of the COVID? Yes. But that's because we caused it. That's because our government caused it. They knew about 2 or 3 months ago that we probably could have started to open things back up again and get people back to work. So yeah, I say we extend the unemployment out, but not adding to it. We don't need to give people more money staying at home than they would make going to work. That's not the American way. That's the socialist way of doing things. So incentivize people to go back to work. And these businesses, man, they got to open back up, and they feel bad. And a lot of them are just leaving forever. So we can open this economy. We can do this.
Thank you. Okay, same question to you, Rick.
Yeah, just checking my mute. Thanks for the question. This is really about the COVID-19 relief and what to do next. It's pretty clear from my visits around the district that we haven't got through the pandemic yet, that the economy is still hurting and people are still hurting in this economy. So I do support, as part of the HEROES Act, that we should include an extension of the weekly unemployment. That number is going to be probably negotiated. The HEROES Act has a $600 a week. The Trump administration has a different number that they want, and the Senate Republicans have a third number that's different. So it's one of those issues where I think the bookends on the negotiation exist to come to a compromise. But I would note that it's still important to have enhanced unemployment assistance for folks, as much as it's important to have a second round of availability of paycheck protection program for small businesses. As much as is important to have another round for to help state and local governments, especially supporting our public health departments like Island County Public Health, the County Public Health Department and public health districts, so they can continue to do the work to address the impacts of the pandemic. Because there aren't shortcuts on this. The pandemic still exists. I have honestly no idea what my opponent is discussing when he talks about what could have happened 2 or 3 months ago to open up the economy. The pandemic was still going strong. It's still going strong today. It really comes down to wear a mask, practice social distancing. If you're going to be in groups, wear a mask and practice social distancing. And that's the number one thing to get to economic recovery while we're continuing to support the foundation of the basics of the economy. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next question, Emily.
All right, this one is to Tim. What do the enlisted personnel need?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, first of all, we need to ensure that we get our pay raises. We need to ensure, I remember when I was under the Clinton administration as a young enlisted guy, I remember I could have aced my advancement exam and not been advanced because the military was cut so deeply. And that same thing was going on under the Obama administration. So what the enlisted people need is they need to know that they're supported by their administration. And I promise you right now, I work on the base and I speak with thousands of people, both officers, junior officers, senior officers, enlisted, senior enlisted, and they all know that Trump respects them. They all know that this administration is supportive of the military. And the reason they know that is because look what we've done. The military is so much stronger than it was just 4 or 5 short years ago. So the enlisted people, they just want to be respected. They want to know that they're going to get paid. They want to know that when they go to war, that they can fight that war without restrictions, that they can go to win that war without political BS in the background. Don't send me to fight a war and don't give me the opportunity to win it. If you send me to win. And that's what the enlisted people want to know. They are the fighters. They are the workers. And they're the ones that are going to go out there and risk their lives for the rest of us. And I thank them every day when I see them and train them at work.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Emily, the next question.
All right, the next one is for Congressman Larsen. Are you willing to give up your congressional health plan to accept an alternate health plan?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I saw that in the chat from somebody who's called me a liar or something for some reason. I'm not sure what he was referring to, but I don't have a congressional health plan. So yeah, I'll give up what I don't have. What I have is a health plan that I purchased through the exchange. Like the law says I have to, and like a lot of people do around the country, either through, in our state, we have a state-based healthcare exchange that was created through the ACA. And then there's the federal exchange as well. And under the Affordable Care Act, members of Congress, if they purchase, if they're not on Medicare, which I'm not, or if they don't have VA healthcare, if they don't have a military retiree or some other government healthcare, then we have to purchase it through exchange like everyone else. So that's what I do. So the fundamental premise of the question really isn't based in fact, because if you're asking me if I'll give up my congressional health plan I purchased through the exchange in order to purchase a healthcare plan through the exchange, I'm already doing that. So that may be lost on people, but that's how things work. And how much time do I have left? How much time do I have left?
You've got a few seconds, so go ahead. We're not really timing these that much.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll be really quick. Just that I think in the time I've been in Congress, I don't think there hasn't been a year where on the Armed Services Committee, I haven't supported a pay raise for the women and men in the military, as well as we need to continue to support the housing allowance for enlisted folks, and childcare continues to be a ongoing concern because many of these folks are married and their spouses are deployed, husband or wife is at home with kids, and we need to be sure we're taking care of not just the enlisted person, but the family as well. And so I think I have a strong record there as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Emily, next question.
All right, this one popped up while both of you were answering question one. So you both talked about how we can open the economy safely. They just want to know a little bit more about your plan and timeline estimate of how to open the economy. More about your plan of opening. Tim, you can go first.
Okay, cool. Yeah, my plan would be to get the education out there, which we have. Everybody who wants to know about COVID knows about COVID. Get the education out there. The people who are at risk, don't come up to me because I don't have a mask on in the park and yell at me because I don't have a mask on in the park. If you don't like it, stay 6 feet away. If you're worried about catching COVID while you're wearing your mask in a park outside on the beach, then don't go outside on the beach and go approach somebody that doesn't have a mask on. Here's the fact, we're adults, we're Americans. I don't know about you, but I take personal responsibility for what I do and don't do. I can choose whether or not I want to take my risk by going to work. And I choose to live my life. I choose to go to work. I choose to pay my bills. I wish my tenants back in Michigan didn't have the choice not to pay their rent because I still have to pay my mortgage. So the government has made this a lot worse than it has. I've said this a bunch of times, and you guys have probably heard me say this. When the cure is worse than the cancer, we've went down the wrong road. So I say, yes, we can open up. We should open up tomorrow. We should open up this morning. And we should do it smartly. And people can wear masks and people can wear face coverings. People can choose where they want to go, if it's a high-risk environment or not. And by doing so, you can give the people the choice of how they want to live their lives. This thing's not going away, people. It's here forever. The dog, the cat, whatever you want to call it, is out of the bag and it's not getting stuffed back in. So we have to learn to live with it. And to keep the economy closed and to keep the businesses closed, that's not living with it.
Okay, Congressman Rick.
I'm going to turn to the scientists, the public health professionals for the best advice. I'm not taking Tim's advice. I'm not taking my advice on how to open up the economy. I'm going to turn to public health professionals and science to best address how to move forward with economic recovery. And the public health response has to lead the economic recovery. And that means wear a mask. It means practice good social distancing. It doesn't mean don't wear a mask. It doesn't mean choose to not wear a mask around others. It means wear a mask and do your part and be part of the broader solution for your community, for your state, and for your country. Because that is what will lead us to the economic recovery. And part of that is to pass another round of COVID-19 relief. I support the Heroes 2.0 Act. It includes $75 billion for additional testing, for contact tracing, and for treatments. But we're all also moving forward on vaccine development. There are 6 separate US-based vaccine development efforts taking place as we sit here today. And having a vaccine that works is going to be important, but that vaccine has to be able to, we have to be sure that it works in all populations in the United States. You know, I agree with my opponent on one thing: we need to open up safely. We disagree on what that means, for sure. I also think that open up safely means continuing the efforts on vaccine development. But we also agree on one thing too: COVID-19 will be with us. It won't be eradicated. Like we haven't eradicated the flu. We get the flu every year, but we have vaccines that we take. And I've already had my flu shot, and I encourage everyone to get your flu shot, so you don't have to deal with being concerned about getting the flu and being concerned about getting COVID-19. So I encourage you to do that. Again, that's your non-public health professional PSA for the day. But I do think that the biggest difference is that between my opponent and me is that I actually have a better idea of what it means to open safely. Because what he's describing, I haven't heard one public health professional say is the right approach. And I'm turning to them for my advice.
Thank you. Okay, Emily, so the final question from the floor before closing remarks.
Yep, final question. If we can't open up now, how can the government support small businesses? For both of them, so go ahead, Tim, first.
All right, cool. So I want to touch on what Rick was saying about opening up safely, and the professionals who tell us what we can and can't do. So why is it okay that you can go to Home Depot with hundreds of other people, or Walmart, or Kmart, or whatever big thrift store, box store there is, but you can't go to the mom and pop store on the corner with 4 people? Who's the brilliant scientist that came up with that? That's the question, right? So the small business can open up, and the small business should open up. And the reason the small business isn't opening up is because our government's not letting them open up. They can do it safe. They can be at least as safe as Home Depot. You cannot tell me that they can't be as safe as Home Depot. There's just no way. So they can do it. I don't know why we're keeping our businesses closed. We have our infection rate is going up because we're testing more and more and more. And yet our hospitalizations and death rates are going down because we know how to treat it. We figured it out. We understand it a lot better than we did before. And like I said, if you want to hold up in a basement, feel free. But I know the small businesses in Oak Harbor, my friends that run the small businesses in Oak Harbor, the small businesses I've ran over the years. We can't survive this, no matter what the government does for us. We need to be in business. We're not on the dole. We want to run our businesses. We want to be productive. We want to be part of a society. We don't want to be prisoners in our own homes because of fear of something that's got a less than 0.5% chance of killing you. So let's open up the businesses. Let's open up the small businesses and at least let them do what the big box stores are doing at a freaking minimum, for God's sakes. Thank you.
Okay, Congressman.
Yeah, thanks. First off, I'm continually shocked by my opponent's insensitivity to the over 2,000 people who have died in Washington State of COVID-19, that the people who have been impacted by having COVID-19, and we don't know what the long-term health care impacts are on people with COVID-19. So this isn't like you get COVID-19 and then you don't have it. You get it and you don't know what's left over in you because we don't know enough about it. We don't know the long-term healthcare impacts of COVID-19 yet, and there's a lot of work left to do on not just thinking about those impacts, and that'll be part of a recovery, but also what the current healthcare impacts people who get it. And I have friends, I have family members who got COVID-19, and I'm extremely concerned about their future healthcare, what it's going to be like for them. I will also note, I visit small businesses. I buy things from small businesses. It's not like all of them are closed, but some of them are. There's no doubt about it. We need to continue to support our small businesses, especially through the pandemic, by passing another round of PPP. I've talked to small businesses who want us to do this. They want Congress to act on passing another round of paycheck protection in order to help get through the worst of this pandemic, which we're still in. But this is a public health emergency that we're in. There's no joke about this thing. There's no joke about COVID-19. We don't know as much as my opponent says we know about COVID-19. But we're learning a lot about it and learning more and more about it so that we can continually appropriately address its impacts. But if we need to do anything as part of the HEROES 2.0 Act, it certainly includes another round of paycheck protection program to continue to help small businesses throughout the area. Meanwhile, hey man, patronize your small businesses, go visit them. That's what I'm doing in my district, and you should too.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to closing remarks. We've had a lot of good questions from the floor. So Autumn, we're going to set the timer. We're going to let you run through 180 seconds instead of having 90 seconds each to do a closing remark. So Tim, you'll get to run through 2 clocks, and then Congressman Rick, you'll get to run through 2 clocks for your closing remarks. So Tim, you're up.
All right, sounds good. Hey, real quick, yeah, we don't know what the long-term things are going to be from this. And you know what? We won't know until the long term, will we? So let's get to living life. So first of all, I want to thank you guys. Most of you people know me. This is my home. This is where I've lived for 30 years, 25 years. This is a great place, and I plan on staying here for the foreseeable future, or probably for the rest of my life, actually. So I thank you guys for the opportunity. But what I want you to do is I want to talk to you guys. I want you to look at what's going on in our society. Healthcare is more expensive and harder to use. Education system has created an entire generation of people who feel entitled to everything but responsible for nothing. People are being criminalized for non-crimes while others are being lauded, even encouraged to commit crimes. That's interesting, isn't it? Upside down world. Big government is wasting our assets and resources without accountability. Hungry kids fighting in the streets could go on forever. So ask yourself, is this what your parents wanted? Is this what you want for your kids? I don't think so. The easy thing to do, and what my current opponent and the media has been doing forever, is blame the current administration. But it's not their fault. They've been there 3.5 years. Who do we blame for the previous disastrous policies? Well, it's career politicians like my opponent, Rick. And that's why we need term limits. So here it is. I'm a different kind of candidate. I want to go to DC. I want to work with the people. I want to work for the people. I ask for your vote. I ask for your support, and I look forward to working for you guys while living with you guys over the next 2 years.
Okay, you have another.
I wasn't sure about the clock. I thought I was running out of time, so.
you have another 90 seconds. Go ahead.
Oh, blast you clock time.
Yep.
All right. So I'm not going to recap the whole thing, but what I would like to say is that it is career politicians. That's our problem, guys. We keep electing the same people, maybe not the same people, but in this case, the same person. We keep electing the same people year after year, time after time, and expecting a different result, expecting them to change their minds, do something different, make a change. And yet we get the same thing over and over again. What do we call that? Well, crazy for one, but insanity is what we really call it, isn't it? And so I want to be a different type of candidate. I want to bring fresh new ideas to DC, and I want to bring them from the 2nd Congressional District, because I want to live here. I want to work here. I want to cry here. I want to laugh here. I want to grieve and celebrate with the people of the 2nd Congressional District, where I've lived my life, where my kids grew up and went to school. This is where I want to be. I don't want to be in DC. I don't want to be in DC, but somebody has to go there that's willing to represent the people, that's willing to listen to the people rather than just take photo ops every 2 years. And get this job rolling, get the gridlock over with, represent the folks that they're supposed to represent, and actually be in the district. My opponent talks about how often he comes back to the district, dozens of times a month and thousands and tens of thousands of miles. What he should be saying is, this is how many times I have to go back to DC to represent my people, not how many times I have to come back to my district to talk to the people. So vote for me.
Okay, thank you. Congressman Rick, the same time goes to you. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks so much to the Oak Harbor Chamber for doing this and accommodating us in the period of COVID-19, being able to do this by Zoom. I'm sure we're all pretty tired of meeting app meetings, and we're looking forward to the day where we can do this in person. And we will be able to do that when we address the public health problem of the pandemic. And the public health response has to lead the economic recovery. There are no shortcuts on this. COVID-19 is dangerous. It's killed over 2,000 people in our state. It's infected many others. And we still don't have a vaccine. So that investment in the vaccine is important. The $75 billion in the HEROES Act for contact tracing, for treatment, and for continued testing is important. Addressing the needs of small businesses through the expansion and continuation of the Paycheck Protection Program is important, and supporting the state and local public health departments is very important as well to continue that public health response so that we get to economic recovery. And we need to start on that. We need to start an economic recovery. I support an infrastructure investment-based recovery. And in Congress, on the Transportation Committee, I've been a strong supporter of investing in our roads, our bridges, our highways, and our transit systems. And I'll continue that effort in the next session of Congress. Support a strong environment, protecting our environment, especially the investment in salmon habitat restoration, which is critical to the health of the Puget Sound and the Salish Sea. We need to protect the ACA, expand the Affordable Care Act as well to include fighting for lower drug prices. So there's a lot of work to do, including the work to address the pandemic. I'm especially pleased to ask for your vote this year. Over the last session of Congress, I've done over 630 separate visits, individual business visits, sites visits in the district, meeting with people throughout the district. I've flown over 150,000 miles in this session of Congress as well, back and forth across the country, coming home to the district to talk to folks. I've had 30 public meetings, including 6 veterans town halls specifically for our veterans. We've had 3 telephone town halls on COVID, reaching nearly 20,000 people in the district. So I'm extremely accessible, and I look forward to continuing to work for you here in the 2nd Congressional District and enjoying days like today before the fall really hits us. So thanks a lot, and I appreciate it. Hope you have your support.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank you and Tim both for being present today, and for us the opportunity to have your time to reach members, reach part of the community. And regardless of how you vote, who you vote for, vote one way or another. Just get out there and vote. Again, if you are not registered, please come by the chamber. We have the paper for you to register. You have till the 26th to get it filled out and get it in. Any questions? We do have the pamphlets as well on it. So it is your right to vote. So we tell you, please get out and vote. And I'm gonna say, mask up, Washington, because we stay safe for you. We wear these so our small businesses can continue, and so everyone in the community can be safe. So really want to say thank you. I appreciate the audience for being here. And unless Rick or you or Tim have any other questions, we can call the meeting adjourned. All right, thank you so much for coming out.
Bye.
Bye-bye.